Welcome to episode number 13 of the Men and Community Podcast. On this week's episode, Matt and Carlo explore the differences between comfort and complacency. Matt shares an eye-opening mental exercise. Carlo explores the opportunities we miss without a clear vision. And together, they paint a picture of what true growth can look like. Thank you for being part of our community.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 13 of the Men and Community Podcast. This episode is going to be very apt, given the blooper that we had just trying to introduce the episode the first time. If you check us out on our new Discord server, you'll get to see what the original opening to this episode was and how it went downhill in a hurry. And we'll see pretty quick how it relates to today's episode.
Yeah, I think so. So for those of you that are maybe joining us for the first time, I'm Carlo. This is Matt, and the two of us make up the Men and Community Podcast. And of course, our community is what makes up our community. And that's probably the main purpose of this show, is to try and bring some inclusion and to bring people together and allow us to find ways to grow and expand upon our horizons in new and exciting ways. So what we normally do as we get started in these episodes is we pull some cards from our great deck of wisdom that asks us questions.
Magical question cards, we call them.
Yes, we do.
As of now. All right, here's the first card that we're both going to answer today. What is the worst thing you would do for $1 million?
Eat a Klondike bar. The worst thing I would do for $1 million. I would be willing to do anything that wouldn't harm another person, or take advantage of mine. Like, I would never cut off an arm for $1 million.
No?
No.
Ooh, I'd think about it.
$1 million isn't enough. If it was $1 billion or 500 million, maybe.
Okay, all right.
But $1 million in today's dollars is just not enough.
Fair enough. What about harming another person? What's your price for harming someone else?
No.
No?
No.
You're never going to be a bounty hunter, huh?
Like, I would tase someone for $1 million.
That sure sounds like harm to me.
I suppose so.
I've never been tased.
Then okay. I would do something non-lethal, non-permanent to someone else for $1 million, I guess.
Nice. Yeah, non-lethal, non-permanent harm. I'm all in on that too. I'd probably do that for less than $1 million. I think that for $1 million, some of the harm can be permanent.
I'm learning so many things about you.
I mean, it's $1 million would be nice. What's the worst thing? I would scoop up all of the animal shit after the Calgary Stampede's done.
Oh, my Lord.
For $1 million.
The sad thing is there's somebody that probably gets paid like not the equivalent of $30K a year to do it.
Yeah.
Like he's probably not a very high paid person.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So harming people and shoveling shit. $1 million. There it is. All right. Your card.
Yes. These are very wisdomly cards.
Wisdomly.
Thought-provoking.
A word you don't hear every day.
Would you choose a life in the clergy or in the military? Military for sure, not the clergy.
Why?
I feel like I would thrive quite well in the structured environment that is the military complex. The clergy, for me, there are things about organized religion that I like and things that I don't. But I think most importantly, it would be that to be a clergyman, you have to give up a lot of life's pleasures in the pursuit of more godly behaviors. And I don't want to. I like the things that I get to do in my life, such as maybe indulging in some alcohol like we did last night, or, the various other things that would change the rating of this podcast if I mentioned. So I don't want to give those up.
Okay, but if the higher calling is the pursuit of opportunities to impact communities, I would suggest that being a clergyman would actually, on an individual level, better equip you to impact a greater number of people.
True, but how can you... The question was, would you rather choose a life in the clergy or in the military? it did not mention the level of passion you have for either of those pursuits.
All right.
So I feel like being a clergyman without the passion to truly be one would be more harmful than beneficial to people.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Just wanted to tweak you a little bit and see if I could devil's advocate your way into thinking about that a little more deeply. I also would choose military. Certainly, I'm much better with gonna make it really weird. Yeah, let's do military.
This is my rifle. This is my gun. This is for fighting. This is for fun.
Ooh, I've never heard that. That's a
Really?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna say I'm better with a gun than a rosary, but that doesn't make sense because I've never shot a gun or held a rosary. So I don't.
Now I kind of want to go shooting with you.
See, I've never done it.
Like I, it's not that I go shooting often, but I've been shooting.
The one opportunity I had is with one of our really, really close friends, and it was the end of a bachelor party, and most of the guys were like, "Hey, let's go shoot
That
things."
sounds like a bad idea.
Hey, let's go shoot things in the middle of nowhere in BC. And this is the first time meeting who is now a very close friend, and both of us looked at each other. We're like, "There's no way in hell."
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna just keep driving and pretend we missed the turnoff.
Smart.
And that was that. So
Okay.
yeah.
So a life of military for us boys.
Military strategist for me, I think, is where.
So you want to be a lieutenant then?
Yeah, I want to be somebody important enough. Not because it's important, but like who has the ability to think at that strategic level.
Sure. Okay. Okay. So this week's episode is kind of interesting. I feel like we talk about a lot of things, and the reason we talk about them is because they're present at that current point in time in our lives. And I had this kind of moment the other night where I'm sitting there thinking about some of the responsibilities in my life. And I had this kind of realization creep into my mind of, you know, this responsibility is something that was given to me because it was felt that I could not only gain value and grow from it, but also because by doing this, I could provide value to other people. But this responsibility has been something that I've had for quite a while now. And as I'm thinking about it, I realized that the quality of what I was doing had started to diminish because this had become a regular occurrence and a regular part of my life. So in specific, what I'm talking about is that we have a weekly meeting at our office, and I've been given the opportunity to start that meeting with a short motivational, inspirational talk, you may say. Something to get the room fired up and ready for a night of growth and being around people and putting on our best face forward. And in the beginning, I would spend, days before that consuming other content, reading good books, and planning out what I was going to talk about so that I could provide the maximum amount of value in this 3 to 5 minute period. And then as time went by, I stopped doing that. And I realized that not only was I not getting the same amount of people coming up to me afterwards and saying, "Hey, thank you so much. I really enjoyed what you said." But I as well was not feeling as invigorated and as strongly positive about the experience anymore. And as I was thinking about this, I started to realize that I think there's a lot of things in our lives that at one point were new, exciting, and opportunities for growth that have become regular pieces of our lives. And because of that, we have maybe stopped committing as much attention to them as we should and have lost the opportunities that those once afforded us. Right?
So do you feel, a couple of just kind of clarifying questions. The first is, do these presentations now feel boring to you?
I don't think they feel boring because as I get up there, it is something that I'm truly passionate about. And, I can talk for days, but because it's something that I now am just thinking of on the fly,
right?
I haven't had an opportunity to truly explore what that concept means to me. So it's just surface level. It's not the same thought-provoking topic or conversation that I might have had previously if I had given it prep time.
And what impact do you feel? So I guess, and I don't know whether we've actually used the word yet, but really what we're trying to get at and how we've kind of discussed the overarching theme in this episode is the idea of like complacency when it comes to responsibilities. So what impact do you feel starting to experience like complacency creeping in on these things is having on you?
Well, a couple of things is one, I feel, I don't know if guilty is the right word, but I feel almost upset that I'm not providing the same level of value that I did before to other people. I also feel like it's an opportunity wasted because I am no longer growing from it. I'm no longer improving from it. And that's a little bit sad to kind of think that something I am so excited and so passionate about from my own shortcoming has led to it not being the opportunity that it once was.
Right. I'm intrigued by this from a couple of different perspectives. The first one coming to mind right now. We talked in episode 11 about mastery. We talk about what it means to have different components of our life, our profession, whatever, that we are in different stages of mastery. Things that we're just starting, the growth curve is very steep, it's very new. Things that we're starting to approach mastery in, and we're just tweaking and finessing certain things. And then things that we've reached the top of that curve. And something that I spoke on at the end of that episode was how important it is to have things in each of those three categories so that you get to experience growth and experience the confidence boost that comes along with the level of mastery at the same time.
Yeah.
And so what I'm curious about is, maybe a twofold question. It's one is, are these presentations maybe something that has moved into that mastery curve for you? And if so, maybe that's okay. But if it's not okay, then maybe you need to think about an opportunity to start that from scratch and completely re-envision what those presentations are, like whether it's the format or the delivery method or something that feels tangibly different enough for you that gives you the motivation to kind of start from.
Yeah, I don't think that I've approached a level of mastery with this.
Okay.
One of the reasons I think I'm passionate about public speaking is because I don't feel it's something that you can truly master. I think it's an ever-evolving goalpost. And to be honest, I'm actually really excited about this revelation that I've had because I'm fortunate enough that there are people both in my personal social groups and my professional groups that have expressed to me and that I feel look up to me and gain value from the interactions they have with me. And I want to do the best for them. So this realization has led me to, I would, almost believe the next step in my pursuit of quote unquote mastery in this subject, right? Without this realization, I don't know if I would have been able to continue growing and getting better. But now that I have realized this, I'm at a whole new stage. How can I grow and become better from this and really deliver that next evolution in what I want to do? And this is exciting because I don't think the revelation is specific to just these talks that I give. I think this revolution is available for any skill and anything that you do in your life, and not only for me, but for everyone. What are those things that you're doing in your life that have become just regular old day-to-day activities that if you actually put the time and effort into committing in growth for it, that you would probably see some really amazing improvement from? And I'll give you an example. I do a lot of weightlifting. It's one of my favorite passions. And in weightlifting, we train for what's called progressive overload. So if you can lift 100 pounds, you don't say, well, 100 pounds is good enough. That's all I'm ever going to lift. If you can lift 100 pounds one week, let's say for 12 reps, and make it to those 12 reps without feeling, a level of failure, then the next week you up it to 110. And that next week when you do 110, you might only make it to 8 or 9 out of those 12 reps before your muscles give up on you. So that is now your new goalpost. Make it to 110, 12 reps. And then once you hit that, you go to 120, right? And I think that this realization is me going, I've now become comfortable lifting the 100 pounds. Let's push it to 110 and see how far I can take this, right? So I'm really excited about it.
That's very, very, it's a great analogy, I think. And I think a lot of, certainly that resonates with me, the idea of like a fitness parallel to this, and trying to understand at what point we reach plateaus and break through plateaus, because our entire life, personal, professional, growth in any sort of way, all of it is going to experience phases, right? And phases is another theme that you see a lot more fitness. And so the phases will take us through growth plateaus. And then, ultimately, you always need to make some sort of a fairly tangible, fairly significant change to break through certain plateaus. And so I'm really keen to try to decode this and decode complacency, because I think this is something that a lot of people must imagine, right? Like I certainly will catch myself being in phases where I'm like, so for me, it's when I'm teaching the dance program that I teach. I've been teaching it for 10 years now, and I'm damn good at it. I know I am.
You are.
Like certainly that sounds arrogant, and not to say that I'm not arrogant, but also like I appreciate that I have been doing this long enough that I have achieved this level of mastery with it. But that's not to say that I don't still want to continue to improve. I understand the impact that the program can have on the participants that I get to share it with, and that's something that drives me and keeps me going. But having said that, I'll still catch myself in these moments where I'll teach the same 10-song playlist because it's something that I'm comfortable with. And then, you get to a venue or an event or meet with a group, and you realize that you haven't put any preparation into actually moving that forward. And then you sit back and you think to yourself, okay, well, I've taught these songs hundreds of times. Did they still have that same impact, that same punch? Or, do I need to spend more time learning new songs, learning new choreography so that I can level up the experience that I'm providing? And it's a tough balance, I think, to try to achieve, especially because the other side of it too, especially for people like you and I who are incredibly hard on yourselves. And I would actually suggest, you mentioned that you're worried that your talks aren't providing as much value. I bet that you don't actually know that to be true.
No.
And a lot of what we do is we project how we feel about our own performance onto how we perceive others to be receiving the information we're giving.
Good point.
So I think that's important to recognize. But in that vein, if we're showing up and not being the most prepared as we feel we can be, it becomes very hard to evaluate an experience. If we are going to grow from something, we need to be able to evaluate it, assess strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and then be able to take that and roll that over into the next time we do it. But if we're not, if we're not doing it in a way that we're proud of, it becomes hard to actually assess that in a meaningful way.
But is being proud of or not being proud of something, in essence, an assessment?
Sure it is. Right. Sure it is. But I think that will also pave the way to other things, right? Like you can go into something that you feel really good about, prepared, ready for, and then come out the other end not feeling proud of it at all.
True.
And I think that still lends itself to being open to critique and open to feedback in a way that, if you go into an experience, whether it's a presentation or a class or an event, and you know in your heart of hearts that you didn't put your best foot forward, it doesn't lend itself to the same level of critical assessment that it might if you were to have, put your whole self into something and have it fall on its face.
So what if we look at this a little bit differently? Because I think the question that I've been asking myself the last couple of days is what brought on this kind of level of self-assessment? Because part of complacency is not either being willing to or not actually looking at the quality of what you're doing, right? You are happy with it, quote unquote, mostly because you haven't actually assessed it. You haven't thought about it. You're just doing it. So I think you have to reach this critical moment of looking from the outside in and saying, okay, if I wasn't me, if I was watching this, or if I was looking at somebody doing this, what would my rating be? How would I feel walking away from it? But because we're not, as hard as we may be and critical as we may be on ourselves as people, there still is this level of, sometimes being blind to our own life and the things that we do. So you have to kind of hit this point of being willing to just assess and look at yourself from a different angle, right? So I don't really know in specific what brought on this thought, other than, now that I think about it, other than just a feeling, right? There was kind of this feeling of a lack of value for me. Right? I was sitting there and I was going, I still enjoy doing it. I just don't feel as excited about it as I used to. And it was in that moment that I realized, it's because the things that I'm talking about they're not the things I really want to talk about. They're not the things that excite me and fire me up the way that I used to select my topics. And it's because I'm not taking the time to sit down ahead of time and go, well, what is my topic going to be? What is this new thing I've learned that I want to share with everybody? Right? You have to be willing to take those moments. And I think, could you imagine if you did everything in your life with that lens of, how can I improve? How can I improve? How can I improve?
Yeah.
I think you would move along in a sense of, pursuing that mastery pretty quickly if you did that all the time.
I think we need to be careful here too, though.
Agreed. Yes.
I don't, we talked a lot in episode 12. Look, our episodes are just flowing together.
They're lining up
nicely. In episode 12, we talked a lot about how we manage to find a balance between ambition and building a safe space for ourselves to be well, right? So we can't always be ambitious all the time. We need to find that balance of comfort and growth. And I think that where we have to be careful is we, I think, over-index ambition to the point where we can treat comfort and complacency as synonymous, right? And I think that's something that we need to really, really carefully acknowledge and recognize, that just because we aren't doing something to the standard that we think we're capable of, it doesn't in all circumstances mean complacency. Now, in the example that you're sharing, sure, if it means that you're no longer spending the time preparing your talks ahead of time, or I'm not spending the time in advance prepping my playlist in as intentional of a way, yes, these things start to be complacent. But I would just be very, very careful that we not overhedge on the bias that we personally, you and I, have towards ambition and growth and development, and conflate comfort and complacency because of that.
And that is a really great point. And I think the reason that I'm leaning towards this being a complacency feeling rather than a comfort feeling is because I am now in this viewpoint of growth.
Yeah.
I've had the realization, and I realized that I am no longer comfortable here.
Yeah.
I've grown complacent, and I'm not okay with that anymore. So I'm ready for the next level of growth.
Cool.
If you're doing something in a sense of comfort because you're happy with the quality, you're happy with, where you currently are at that level, then there's no reason to always pursue that next step of growth because you are comfortable. There's a saying that, a good life is the enemy of a great life. And while I believe in that, you have to be at that point in time in the mindset of ready to pursue a great life. Because sometimes a good life is good and that is what you want. You're comfortable in it. But the moment that good life is because of complacency and not comfort, it now becomes time to pursue the great life.
Yeah, what comes to mind for me when you said that is, I think that, each of us, and certainly those of you listening, probably have in your heads, top of mind, the name of a person who you would assess that they are over comfortable or complacent and unhappy about it.
Yes.
Right? Like they have chosen intentionally to not move their life forward, and they still grumble about it
all the time.
And you just sit there and you're like, what the hell? Like, you have these opportunities, these places, but you're just actively choosing not to do it. And that's like where, to your point, you need to make the decision and be okay with the choice that you're making, and understand that if you're choosing this path of comfort, that's you just need to understand the consequences of choosing good rather than great.
Yeah. I think I have, maybe to put it in a little bit of perspective, I have a story. There's this person in my life that for her entire childhood, she struggled with being overweight and not feeling good about it. Very low body positivity. And I had a conversation with her a couple of years ago, and she never really overcame her struggles with weight. But what she did overcome was the body positivity issues. She became comfortable in her own skin and who she was and how she lived her life, and really grasped onto that. And it was a very inspirational moment for me to watch her talk about this, because I myself have, struggled with body positivity and being overweight and all those kinds of things. And we went two completely different directions with it. I became very, very committed to my health and my physical appearance, and, became, a quote unquote gym rat. And, I'm very, very disciplined with my diet. And, and I really went as far as I could to lose weight and become comfortable with who I am. And it's a ever-present thought in my mind. And I'm not saying that she is not present and thoughtful of her health. She most definitely is. But her direction was, I am comfortable with who I am. And right now, this works for me. And it allows me to be positive and have better mental health because I am in this stage of comfort, so that I may focus on improving my life in other ways and not always be concerned about this.
True.
Where I went full gung-ho, lost as much weight as I possibly can, became as physically fit as I possibly could, because that to me was the solution that needed to happen before I could then improve my life in other ways. So same end result, different directions. One came out of complacency, one came out of comfort.
Right. Okay, so as we're talking now, I'm kind of, for those of you that are listening and not watching on video, I'm kind of scribbling on Post-it notes today to keep my ideas in track, and I'm trying to create kind of process or I'm trying to codify.
You're systemizing this.
Systemize
Yeah,
this, absolutely.
which is one of your great skills. Yeah.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing is the first step is there needs to be that acknowledgement. You talked about it as that revelation, that oh shit moment that, this is not going the way it used to be going, or maybe not the way I envisioned it going. Right. And I say that as broadly as possible because this could be relationship related. It could be professional related. Sure. It could be micro, macro, whatever the case may be. And then what I hear you talking about then is the second piece of this. Once you've acknowledged that there's this level of stagnancy, you need to figure out whether there's the desire to change. You need to decide whether this is a complacency thing that I'm not okay with. This is a comfortable thing that I'm okay with. And make that distinction and understand that choice. The third thing then that we need to do is to be able to forecast or be real upfront and honest with ourselves about the consequences of that. Okay, if I choose the path of comfort, it means that I'm going to spend less time having to prep these playlists or these presentations. It also means that when I show up to the podium or put a microphone on, that this might be the consequence of those actions.
Yeah.
Right? What's the consequence of that comfort versus that growth, that change? And you have to be okay with that. And then, once you get to that point, and that's kind of the good or great conversation that you're distinguishing, choosing whether you want to be good, whether you want to be great, what those consequences are. Then you get to envision that future, right? So like, let's envision that future state. Like, what is it that because you've now had your revelation, you've articulated that you want to change, you want to continue that growth curve. You're choosing in this respect, particularly, you're choosing great over good. So now step 4, like, let's envision that future state. So what is it going to look like when you've made this change that regardless of if you know whether or not what the change is yet, what is it going to look like when you've made the change?
Sure. And interestingly enough, I feel that it will almost be somewhat systematized, right? Because I feel like every truly successful person, business, organization has a certain level of system that they follow to ensure a level of quality. And in a broad, kind of silly example, you look at McDonald's, right? McDonald's is a very large, globally successful corporation because they taught teenagers who don't know how to make their beds in the morning how to make your food in 5 minutes or less. And they did it with a system, right? Unfortunately, that system means the ice cream machine is always broken, but they did it with a system. So, I look at it in the specific example of this speaking that I do as setting aside the time, every week to pick a topic, research that topic, and then expand my own knowledge of it so that I can provide a more in-depth and thought-provoking talk on it.
So I'm going to challenge you here to repeat your answer essentially, but I want you to flip it the other way around. Let me explain. I asked you to envision what that end state looks like when you've done the thing, you've made the change, and now you're in this future state where you're experiencing that growth again. You're able to do that. And I think this is so common, went to, I need to do this, this, and this on the way to that. Here's the thing. I think that when we put ourselves in a position where we try to create the plan en route to a future that we haven't clearly envisioned, it's much easier to lose ourselves along the way. And it's more easy for us to fall back into that complacency because it's much easier for us to say, I know I need to spend this hour, but not tonight. I've got XYZ that I need to do. That's this thing. And if we lose track of that purpose, that clear articulated vision for how we want that change to happen, then the rest of the steps can fall short, or we don't know where that path is taking us, whatever. So share with us that answer again, but flip it and start with what is going to be different. And then now you're jumping ahead to the last step in my cipher, in my code, to the work back plan. So what's that carrot at the end of the stick, the light at the end of the tunnel, the North Star, whatever it is? What's that? Start there and then work backwards for me.
Sure. So I think it would be the feeling that every time I delivered a talk, that I got to look out into the audience and see someone feeling a sense of realization, a sense of maybe growth, excitement, in the broader spectrum of it, a feeling of value that they have gained. And that as I stepped off that stage, also feeling very concrete and confident that what I talked about provided value, regardless of whether I got the feedback from anybody or not, that I felt I provided that and I felt good about the talk.
Love that.
Yeah. And I think it's really cool what you just had me do there, because not only does this set the groundwork for this next stage of expansion for me, but it's also a realization that if that vision for the final result was present in the beginning, before I even started talking, the complacency may never have happened.
Possibly. Yeah.
Right? And I understand that that's somewhat of a difficult thing, because often we're given opportunities without being given the opportunity to realize the ramifications they will have in our life. And this was very true for this speaking position, because, it was given to me not as part of a conversation of an overall goal, but hey, I think you'd be really good at doing this. Let's give it a shot. Right? So I never really was given the opportunity or realized to myself that I had to sit down and paint a vision of what this future would look like. I just jumped straight into it. And because of that, there was no vision laid out, right?
Yeah, I think that most people have this tendency to do the stuff, to work on the problem, to solve the issue. And I think that what oftentimes we fail to do is to clearly articulate the problem and envision what we truly want for the solution. We jump to the steps.
Yeah.
We assume somehow that we already know the problem and what the solution is, and then we just start doing steps because it feels more comfortable to check the tick boxes to say that you're doing things, you're making progress, that feels good. And then we just start to wander, and so what you just said is fantastic, because it really just illustrates the importance of knowing the end state, and then you can work backwards. You can figure out what the problem or the challenge is. And then you can paint that roadmap, but it's really hard to know what the best route from A to B is unless you can actually identify A and B on a map.
Yeah. Yeah. So bringing it back to my analogy before, of trying to raise from 100 pounds to 110, if you say, well, the goal here is to have a feeling of strength and being fit and knowing that if an opportunity is given to me to go on a hike or climb a mountain or attend a dance play class, or I know that I can keep up.
Yeah.
Then when you go to raise that weight, it's not because you were, complacent in it and feel like it was, now I finally realized I need some growth. It was on the pursuit of that ultimate feeling of achievement and that ultimate feeling of I've, attained what I want. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. This is, it's always fun as we do these episodes. Sometimes we're talking about these things and you come to a realization that you haven't had the chance to articulate in your own brain yet. And for me, again, it's one of the big reasons I love doing this podcast, is because we have these opportunities for those things to happen, right? And you don't normally have that as you just kind of think it out on your own. once you get to talk about it and somebody asks those good questions, then you really start to figure it out a little bit more, right?
Yeah. So true. So true. And that dedicated space too, right? And, obviously in order for us to record this podcast, we need to set aside this space in our calendars, make the time to be present, to have this conversation. And, without doing that work to create that space, so often that isn't available to us.
Yeah. Okay, so a question I would have for you as we start to conclude this episode is, if you were to set out on a path, right, a roadmap, a step-by-step, to create a vision for something you have in the future. So I'm not talking about creating the plan to get to the vision, but I'm talking about how to create the actual vision, the final end goal, because you're amazing at systematizing things. How would you suggest to somebody they begin to create that vision of what they may want to, where they may want to end up?
Great question. One of the exercises that I do a lot in the workshops that I deliver, it's called 9 whys. Why the number 9? Couldn't tell you. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 9, but 9 whys is the exercise that I like to facilitate here. And the idea is that in order to truly understand purpose, now this can be the purpose of a specific thing in our life. It can be to evaluate like our personal purpose, our individual mission statement, if you will. And then you can use that and filter it against any opportunities. So if there's a job that's coming up, for example, that you're like, do I apply for it? Do I not? You can filter it this way. So the activity essentially goes like this. You can do it individually. Works better if you're sitting with somebody. And there, your partner's only role is to continue to ask you why. So as an example, why don't you ask me that question again? I will answer it. All you're going to do after is continue to ask me why. So ask me the question again.
How do you create a vision of the ultimate goal, or where you want to end up as a final result in whatever path you're pursuing?
So really it's about looking into the future, understanding and writing down a list of the things that you want for the future.
Why?
Well, I think when we have a chance to reflect on what we want for the future, it gives us a better opportunity to illustrate what we want for ourselves, and we can get excited about that.
Why would you get excited?
I just think that, so often people live their lives, we live our lives on autopilot. And when we have that chance to think what type of future we could create for ourselves, it gives us that passion, that fire to really get excited about what we could create for a world around us.
And why would you want to be excited about that?
For me, I just want everybody to live in a world where they feel like they're in control of their own lives, and where they feel like the actions that they take have a bearing on the lives that they're creating for themselves. And I think that level of control and autonomy and independence is so vital to living a fulfilling life.
That's really cool.
So you use this simple word as why, and you slowly start to dive deeper and deeper and deeper, and you start to understand the value of this sort of thing. And so there's a kind of a cool meta way of like sharing the 9 whys exercise, but you can use that why exercise, the 9 whys, to really unpack what that future is for yourself, even though, the first question is always kind of a what. And then when you get into the whys, you get deeper and deeper and deeper. And the more whys you ask, the more powerful and profound these things are, so that it'll help clarify the strength of that vision, and that the picture, the image becomes more clear the deeper you go into the whys.
No, I really, really like that. And now that I'm I've been exposed to this, because I've never heard of this 9 whys or anything along the concept before. So I think I'm going to pick a few people in my life and give that a shot with them, because I think it's very eye-opening and really, really cool exercise. So thank you for sharing that. Why? Why is it a cool opening exercise? I think because everybody deserves an idea of a clear path in life. And like you said, so many of us don't have it. And I think I could truly benefit from having that clear path. Why? Because sometimes I feel very scattered. I feel like I am trying to do a million different things, all in the pursuit of some sort of end goal that seems to never be clear to me. Why? Because I've never spent the time to actually paint that end goal. I have a grand idea of, what I want to offer this world, but it's never been articulated in a set of words. And I think I would benefit very heavily from that. Very cool. Very cool. I like this. All right. So as we bring a conclusion to this episode, it's so funny to me because before we clicked record, you're like, I think this is going to be one of our shorter episodes. And that always tells me it's not going to be because we just love to talk about these things. So I think as a takeaway from my takeaways I want you guys to take away from this episode is going to be understanding that you have to be in a sense and a feeling of willingness to grow and willingness to improve before anything that you're complacent in actually becomes aware to you, right? And that when it does, is not a moment to feel poorly about it, but it is a moment to celebrate a new stage of growth in your life, or to make the decision that you're comfortable and you want to stay where you are. But either direction you choose to go in is something to be celebrated, because it means you've hit a level of self-awareness that is, I think, truly empowering. So, take this moment as you get off of this episode, as Matt so often suggests, go outside, put your feet in the grass, go spend some time outdoors, disconnect from your phones, and maybe take that time to think about those areas of your life that, am I complacent in this or am I comfortable in this? And have that moment of self-awareness. I think if each of us could do that after this episode, I think we'd all, I personally feel like I'd report back feeling that I have a lot of areas in my life that I'm now excited to grow in.
And doing all of that with a sense of both grace and curiosity. We can't always grow in every aspect of our lives all the time. And for those of you that are as ambitious as Carlo and I are, you need to treat yourself with grace and appreciate that it's not always the time to grow at everything always. But in the same way, being curious about what the potential could be if you chose to pursue that growth. And I think that balancing that with curiosity and grace can be really powerful.
And something that I'm realizing that we forgot to do in the last episode,
I had that realization 30 seconds ago,
was we didn't do our gratitude for each other. And that is, as we concluded recording episode 12, I was like, oh, what did we forget? I felt like we forget something. So I'm glad that we've both remembered now. But for me, I'm going to start off is my gratitude is twofold. I got two things I'm pretty grateful of in you. You and I have not had the opportunity to be in person together in a little bit over a month. And I've said this before, but it feels like just getting together again is like we never missed a beat, right? We fall right back into just being who we are and being this amazing supportive culture that we have between the two of us. And it's so nice to know that no matter where we each travel in the world, no matter what we go through, that we can just come back to this safe and supportive and caring environment and beautiful friendship that I feel that we have. So I'm grateful for that. And the other thing that I'm really grateful for, you guys get two because we missed last episode. The other thing that I'm really grateful for is this amazing skill of actionable or systemizable kind of stuff that you have in your back pocket at almost all times. Whether it be an exercise or a thought-provoking experiment or an action that someone can take. you've always got something that you can recommend them. You know, you're not the kind of person that as someone shares their woes with you, that you'll be like, oh, sorry you feel that way, and walk away. You'll be like, I'm sorry you feel that way. What if you tried this? And I know that some people will say sometimes we don't want answers to our problems. We just want you to listen to our problems. I get that. But as someone who truly appreciates good feedback, having those come from you is an immense benefit to me, and I appreciate it about you.
Thank you. Thank you. The two that I'm feeling for you today, the first one is, you know, this episode was another example of you offering yourself to be vulnerable in an area where you feel you could be doing better, you could be improving, you could be growing. And it is such a vulnerable place to be, to offer something like that of yourself. And so I'm really grateful for how willing you are to be vulnerable, not just with me, but through all of our communities and to all of our viewers to their podcast. Also feeling just so grateful that, you know, as you say, that we continue to be able to connect and find the space for these conversations and to both open ourselves up and the way that you're able to open yourself up to ideas and thoughts and feedback and seeing the excitement in your eyes reflects that back to me, and it makes me inspired to go and do the work and continue growing, just hearing the ways in which you want to continue to grow yourself. So thank you for being an inspiration.
Thank you. Warm and fuzzy. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Men in Community podcast. As always, Matt, I'm going to speak for Matt and we're very grateful to have you guys listen in. The feedback that we get from you guys is very encouraging, very heartwarming. You know, we hope to continue doing it, as long as you guys continue finding value in it. Please check us out on all of our social media platforms, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. If you listen to us audio, it's Spotify, Apple Music, TuneIn, all of those things. And check us out on our Discord platform. Matt, do you want to talk about our Discord a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Our Discord is a new community site where people can come and interact with us and with each other. It's a space where we're going to provide a place for each, and have provided a place for people to share content related to specific episodes. So you get a little bit of that content relevant to each topic area that you might have interest in connecting more about. And also just a place for you generally to, shoot the shit, come chat with us, ask any questions you might have. Also a great space for you to submit some ideas that you have for future episodes that you'd like us to speak on and tackle. So really, really keen to have you all as a part of our Discord. We feel like that's a really powerful tool that we can use to build that really 360-degree conversation with all of you.
And you can find a link to that in our link tree on our Instagram profile. So we hope you guys all enjoyed this episode. We hope you join us and communicate with us in whatever way that you choose. And other than that, we're going to say thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.
See you, everyone.
Bye.